We live in a world where everyone wants to be heard, but few are willing to listen. We are constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, debates, and conversations happening at lightning speed. And yet, the most impactful leaders, the strongest relationships, and the deepest connections all come from one simple skill: the ability to listen. Listening is not just about hearing words. It's about understanding, making people feel valued, and creating trust. The greatest leaders, communicators, and problem solvers aren't the ones who talk the most, they're the ones who listen the best. If you want to build trust, strengthen relationships, and truly connect with people, you must master the art of listening. Listening is not about waiting for your turn to speak. Most of us think we are good listeners, but in reality we are just waiting for our turn to talk. Instead of truly absorbing what the other person is saying, our minds are busy formulating a response, thinking about what we will say next, or even preparing a counterpoint. This isn't listening. It's just waiting. And when we do this, we miss out on the deeper meaning behind what's being said. People don't just communicate with words. They communicate with emotions, tone, and body language. If we're too focused on our own thoughts, we fail to pick up on the real message being shared. Real listening requires a shift in focus. Instead of centering ourselves in the conversation, we need to place our attention on the speaker. This means being fully present, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. It means resisting the urge to interrupt or jump in with our own experiences. A conversation isn't a race to get your point across. It's an opportunity to understand another person's perspective. When we genuinely listen, we make people feel seen and valued, and that builds deeper trust and stronger relationships. One of the biggest barriers to true listening is the fear of silence. Many people feel uncomfortable when there's a pause in a conversation, so they rush to fill the gap with words. But in doing so, they often cut off the speaker before they have fully expressed themselves. Silence is not the enemy of conversation. It is a tool. When we allow pauses, we give the speaker time to gather their thoughts, and we give ourselves time to fully process what has been said. Often, the most meaningful insights come after a moment of silence. Another reason we struggle with listening is because we approach conversations with an agenda. We want to convince, persuade, or prove a point. But when we listen with an agenda, we are not truly open to what the other person is saying. We filter their words through our own biases and only hear what confirms our existing beliefs. True listening means letting go of the need to be right and instead focusing on being curious. It means asking questions, seeking clarity, and making an effort to see the world through someone else's eyes. The greatest leaders, mentors, and communicators are those who listen not to reply, but to understand. They know that listening is not passive. It is an active process that requires attention, patience, and humility. When we stop waiting for our turn to talk and start truly listening, something incredible happens. People open up, they trust us more, and they feel valued. And in return, we gain deeper connections, richer insights, and a greater ability to inspire and lead. People don't want to be fixed, they want to be heard. When someone shares a problem with us, our instinct is to jump in with a solution. We believe we're being helpful by offering advice, fixing the issue, or providing a quick answer. But in reality, most people don't open up because they want a solution. They open up because they want to be heard. They want to feel that their emotions are valid, that their struggles are understood, and that someone genuinely cares about what they're going through. The need to be heard is deeply human, and when we skip over that and rush to solve the problem, we unintentionally make people feel dismissed. Listening is not about providing answers, it's about creating space for someone to express themselves. When someone tells us about a tough day at work, a personal struggle, or a difficult decision, they are not always looking for step-by-step guidance. Often, they just need an outlet. They need someone who will sit with them in their experience, acknowledge their feelings, and make them feel seen. When we respond with things like, "Oh, that's not a big deal," or "Here's what you should do," we might think we're being helpful, but instead we're telling them that their feelings don't matter as much as finding a quick fix. One of the most powerful things we can say in a conversation is, "I hear you." These three simple words can change everything. They let the other person know that they are not alone, that their feelings are understood, and that they don't need to justify their emotions. Sometimes, the best response isn't advice at all. It's a nod, an "I understand," or even just silence that allows them to continue speaking. By resisting the urge to fix and instead focusing on making the person feel heard, we create deeper trust and connection. This is especially important in leadership, relationships, and mentorship. A great leader doesn't always have the answers. They create an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their concerns. A great friend doesn't rush to give advice. They make space for vulnerability. A great partner doesn't try to minimize feelings. They validate them. When people feel heard, they feel valued. And when they feel valued, they are more open to growth, solutions, and positive change on their own terms. Instead of immediately offering solutions, try asking thoughtful questions. How does that make you feel? What do you think would help? Or simply, tell me more. These questions signal that you are invested in understanding their experience, rather than fixing it. And often, when people feel truly heard, they gain the clarity and confidence they need to find their own solutions, without us needing to step in at all. Silence is a powerful tool. In most conversations, silence feels uncomfortable. The moment there is a pause, we feel an urge to fill it with words. Whether to keep the conversation flowing, to ease tension, or simply to avoid the awkwardness of not speaking. But the truth is, silence is not empty. It is one of the most powerful tools in communication, and those who understand how to use it effectively can transform the way they connect with others. Silence allows for reflection, deeper thought, and emotional processing, which are all essential components of meaningful conversation. When we speak too quickly or jump in to fill a gap in conversation, we often miss what's truly being said. Many times people need a moment to gather their thoughts before responding. By giving them that space, rather than rushing in with our own words, we show that we value their perspective. Some of the most profound thoughts, the deepest emotions, and the most honest expressions only surface when there is room for them. Silence invites that depth. It encourages people to go beyond surface-level answers and tap into what they truly feel or believe. Another reason silence is so powerful is that it communicates presence. When someone pauses during a conversation and we don't immediately jump in, we signal that we are not just hearing them, but actively listening. We show that we are engaged, patient, and willing to give them the time they need to express themselves fully. This builds trust. In contrast, interrupting or speaking too soon can make someone feel rushed or dismissed, as if their words are not important enough to be given space. Silence also plays a crucial role in emotional conversations. When someone is sharing something difficult or vulnerable, our instinct might be to immediately respond with reassurance or advice, but often what they need is simply for us to be there. Sitting in silence with someone, without judgment, without interruption, can be one of the greatest acts of support. It tells them that they don't need to say everything perfectly, that their emotions are welcome, and that they are not alone. Sometimes silence says more than words ever could. In leadership, relationships, and even negotiations, silence can be a strategic advantage. It allows people to process information, encourages others to reveal more than they originally intended, and creates an atmosphere of careful thought rather than reactive decision-making. The ability to embrace silence, rather than fearing it, separates good communicators from great ones. When we stop treating silence as something to avoid and start using it as a tool for deeper understanding, we unlock a new level of connection and influence. Body language speaks louder than words. Communication is more than just the words we say. In fact, studies suggest that a significant portion of what we communicate comes from how we say things rather than what we say. Our facial expressions, gestures, posture, and even the way we make eye contact all send powerful messages, sometimes more powerful than our words. The problem is many people focus so much on what they want to say that they completely overlook what their body is communicating. If our words say one thing, but our body language says another, people will always believe what they see over what they hear. Think about the last time you spoke with someone who seemed distracted. Perhaps they kept checking their phone, looking around the room, or crossing their arms while you spoke. Even if they said, "I'm listening," did you feel heard? Probably not. That's because their body language told a different story. On the other hand, when someone maintains eye contact, nods in agreement, leans in slightly, and keeps an open posture, you feel their engagement. That's the difference between passive hearing and active listening. Our body signals whether we care, and people pick up on it, whether we realize it or not. Another key aspect of body language is mirroring. When two people are engaged in a meaningful conversation, they often unconsciously mirror each other's gestures and expressions. This is a sign of connection and trust. Great listeners do this naturally because they are fully present in the conversation. They don't force it, it just happens. But when we are disconnected, distracted, or impatient, our body language creates distance instead of connection. Crossing our arms, looking away, or appearing stiff can make the other person feel like they are not being fully received. Tone of voice is also a crucial part of body language. It's not just about what we say, but how we say it. A simple phrase like, "I understand," can carry completely different meanings depending on the tone. One can sound dismissive, another can sound empathetic. When we combine a warm tone with open body language, people feel safe expressing themselves. They trust that we are genuinely present, and that makes all the difference in how deeply they share their thoughts and feelings. The best communicators are not just skilled in choosing the right words. They are masters of nonverbal listening. They understand that their facial expressions, eye contact, and even small gestures like nodding or an open stance can create a space where people feel comfortable, valued, and truly heard. Being mindful of our body language isn't just about looking engaged, because in the end, people won't just remember what we said, they'll remember how we made them feel. Ask questions that show you care. One of the most powerful ways to show someone you're truly listening is by asking thoughtful questions. Too often, conversations become one-sided, with one person talking while the other simply nods along. But real listening isn't passive. It's an active process that requires engagement. When we ask meaningful questions, we signal that we're not just hearing words, we're genuinely interested in understanding the person speaking. A well-placed question does more than keep a conversation going. It makes people feel valued, heard, and respected. The key is to ask questions that go beyond surface-level curiosity. Instead of simply responding with, "That's interesting," or "I see," we can ask things like, "What was that experience like for you?" or "What made you feel that way?" These types of questions show that we are not just waiting for our turn to talk, but that we are invested in the other person's thoughts and emotions. Great leaders, mentors, and communicators understand this. The quality of our questions determines the depth of our connections. Another important aspect of asking good questions is avoiding the trap of interrogation. When questions feel forced or robotic, they can put people on the defensive rather than making them feel comfortable. The best conversations happen when questions flow naturally and come from a place of genuine curiosity. Instead of just collecting information, we should be listening with the intent to understand. This requires patience, allowing the other person to fully express their thoughts before jumping in with another question. Great questions also encourage self-reflection. Sometimes people don't fully understand their own emotions or experiences until they have the opportunity to talk through them. A well-placed question can help someone uncover insights they hadn't even realized. For example, asking, "What do you think is holding you back?" or "What would success look like for you?" can prompt deeper thought and meaningful discussion. In many cases, the person speaking may find their own answers just by having the space to explore their thoughts. When we make a habit of asking thoughtful questions, we create stronger connections, inspire trust, and encourage deeper conversations. People don't just want to be heard, they want to feel understood. And when we show that we truly care through the questions we ask, we elevate the quality of our relationships, both personally and professionally. The best listeners are not the ones who have all the answers. They are the ones who ask the right questions. Empathy is the heart of true listening. Listening without empathy is just hearing words. True listening requires us to step into the other person's world and see things from their perspective. It's not about agreeing with everything they say, it's about understanding why they feel the way they do. When we listen with empathy, we're not just processing information, we're connecting with the emotions behind the words. And that connection is what builds trust, deepens relationships, and makes people feel truly heard. Empathy starts with presence. If we are distracted, half listening while checking our phones, or mentally preparing our response before the other person has even finished speaking, we are not truly listening. We must be fully in the moment, giving our complete attention to the person speaking. This means making eye contact, reading their emotions, and responding in a way that shows we understand. A simple, "That sounds really difficult," or "I can see why that would be frustrating," can make a person feel seen and validated. When people feel like their emotions are acknowledged, they open up more, and the conversation becomes richer. One of the biggest mistakes we make in conversations is trying to fix things instead of feeling them. When someone shares a problem or an emotional struggle, our instinct is often to offer a solution. "Here's what you should do," or "It's not that bad." But most of the time, people don't want a solution right away. They want to feel understood first. Empathy means resisting the urge to jump in with advice and instead sitting with the other person in their emotions. It's about saying, "I hear you. That must be really tough." When people feel like we truly understand what they're going through, they become more open to solutions, but only after they feel heard. Empathy is also about listening without judgment. Too often we filter what people say through our own experiences, biases, and assumptions. We hear their words and immediately compare them to what we would do or how we would feel in their situation. But true listening means putting aside our own perspective and focusing entirely on theirs. It means asking, "What does this situation feel like for you?" instead of assuming we already know. It requires humility, the willingness to accept that we don't have all the answers and that our job is simply to understand. At its core, empathy and listening is about making people feel valued. It tells them you matter, your feelings are valid, your experiences are real. And that kind of listening is rare. In a world full of noise where people are constantly speaking but rarely feeling heard, the ability to listen with empathy is one of the greatest gifts we can offer. It transforms ordinary conversations into moments of true human connection. Listening requires letting go of ego. One of the biggest barriers to truly listening is our own ego. Too often when we engage in conversations, we are more focused on how we are perceived, rather than on understanding the other person. We want to sound smart, be right, or prove a point. But the moment we prioritize ourselves over the person speaking, we stop listening. True listening requires humility. The willingness to put aside our need to be the center of attention and instead make space for someone else's voice. Ego shows up in conversations in many ways. Sometimes it's the urge to interrupt because we think we already know what the other person is going to say. Other times it's the habit of turning the conversation back to ourselves. "That happened to me too. Let me tell you about it." We do this not because we don't care about the other person, but because we naturally want to relate things to our own experiences. But when we do this too much, we shift the focus away from the speaker and onto ourselves. Instead of making them feel heard, we make them feel overshadowed. Another way ego interferes with listening is through defensiveness. When someone shares an opinion or perspective that challenges our own beliefs, our instinct is often to push back, debate, or correct them. But when we are too focused on being right, we stop being open. We start listening to respond rather than listening to understand. Great listeners don't see conversations as a competition, they see them as an opportunity to learn. They are willing to set aside their need to win a discussion in order to gain insight and build connection. Letting go of ego also means being comfortable with silence. People often rush to fill gaps in conversation because they fear looking unprepared or unintelligent. But sometimes, the best response is no response at all, just giving the other person space to process their thoughts. Great listeners understand that they don't have to always have the last word. They don't have to offer instant solutions. They recognize that the conversation is not about them, it's about the person speaking. At its core, listening is an act of generosity. It requires putting someone else's needs, emotions, and experiences above our own desire to be heard. It requires humility to accept that we don't always have the answers, and that other perspectives matter just as much as ours. The greatest leaders, mentors, and communicators are those who can quiet their own ego long enough to truly hear what others have to say. Because when we listen selflessly, we don't just understand people better, we make them feel seen, valued, and respected. Listening is a skill that requires practice. Many people assume that listening is something we naturally do, but real listening, the kind that builds trust, deepens relationships, and creates meaningful connections, is a skill that must be developed. Just like any other skill, it requires effort, self-awareness, and continuous improvement. The problem is that most of us don't actively practice listening. We hear words, we respond, and we move on. But listening isn't just about processing sound. It's about being fully engaged in a way that makes the other person feel valued and understood. And that level of engagement doesn't happen automatically. It happens through intentional practice. One of the biggest challenges with listening is that our minds are constantly distracted. Studies show that the average person can only focus for a short amount of time before their attention drifts. And in conversations, this means that while someone is speaking, we may already be thinking about our response, what's next on our to-do list, or something completely unrelated. This is why practicing presence is so important. It means making a conscious effort to clear our mental distractions and give our full attention to the person speaking. Whether that means putting our phones away, maintaining eye contact, or actively resisting the urge to interrupt, practicing presence helps us become better listeners over time. Another way to practice listening is to reflect on our own habits. Do we interrupt often? Do we tend to steer conversations back to ourselves? Do we get defensive when we hear something we disagree with? Self-awareness is key to improving our listening skills. By recognizing our own tendencies, we can work on adjusting them. One simple yet powerful habit is to pause before responding. When someone finishes speaking, instead of immediately jumping in, we can take a moment to process their words and consider how to respond thoughtfully. This small pause helps us shift from reactive listening to intentional listening. Practicing listening also involves being open to feedback. Just as we would seek feedback to improve in any other area, whether it's leadership, communication, or decision-making, we should also seek feedback on our listening skills. Asking trusted colleagues, friends, or family members questions like, "Do you feel like I listen well?" Or, "Is there anything I could do to be a better listener?" can provide valuable insight. It takes humility to acknowledge that we might not be as good at listening as we think we are, but that awareness is what allows us to grow. The best listeners understand that they will never be done learning how to listen. There's always room to improve, always ways to become more present, more empathetic, and more engaged. Listening is not just about hearing words. It's about creating a space where others feel heard. And the more we practice, the more natural it becomes. Over time, listening transforms from something we do into something we are, a defining characteristic of how we interact with others, how we build relationships, and how we lead with impact. Listening is more than just a skill, it's a responsibility. It's the foundation of trust, the bridge to deeper relationships, and the key to truly understanding those around us. In a world that constantly competes for our attention, the ability to be fully present and genuinely listen is a rare and powerful gift. The best leaders, the most inspiring mentors, and the most influential people in our lives aren't the ones who always have the right answers. They're the ones who take the time to hear us, to make us feel seen, and to understand us on a deeper level. If we want to create real impact, if we want to lead with influence, if we want to build stronger relationships, then we must commit to listening with intention, with empathy, and without ego. It's not always easy. It takes practice. It requires humility, but the reward is something far greater than just better conversations. It's a world where people feel valued, where ideas are truly heard, and where meaningful change becomes possible. So the next time you find yourself in a conversation, Challenge yourself to listen differently. Don't listen to respond, listen to understand. Don't listen to prove a point, listen to connect. Because when we become better listeners, we don't just change the way we communicate, we change the way we lead, the way we impact the people around us.